Pasco MPO board irrational, closed-minded fixation on grade separation at the US 41 SR 54 intersection. So after the MPO phase 2 was completed, task force had voted the PFI as their preferred alternative. At the January 2018 Pasco MPO board meeting, Commissioner Mariano proposed, and the board approved, of tasking the MPO staff with evaluating the cost feasibility of taking 54 under 41 and the railroad track, what they called cut and cover. So the task force has spoken. They've said they prefer the PFI, and the response of the board, this Mariano guy, who is, remember, ex officio board member of the Pasco Economic Development Council, is saying, well, let's go under. How about that? We didn't consider going under. So it's basically just dismissing the vote of the task force, right? That's canceled. They've been dissolved. They don't matter anymore. How about going under? That's a great idea. The board action followed right after Vision 5456 task force had voted the PFI as their preferred alternative. The board seemed to have concluded the problem people were having was the visual impact of the bridge. So if the grade separation could just go underground, then that should make it okay, right? A grade separation is just an end in itself for them. That's what they want, a grade separation for future freeway. Never mind that whether State Route 54 goes over or under 41, the congestion on 41 in the ramps at the signal remains. But it became clear to me at this time that a congested 41 is perfectly fine with the MPO board. There's no concern over 41 at all expressed. You know, how does 41 benefit by taking the bridge under 41 instead of over 41? Everything else remaining the same. 41 is still a parking lot. You would think that going under 41 intersection and the railroad track within a mile from Pasco's largest sinkhole in decades, that's what that photo is, that destroyed at least 7 homes just the July before in an area that is literally called Land O'Lakes and prone to tropical storms, doesn't seem very feasible or prudent. You know, that area is like sand and marsh with a very high water table. The idea that you can just go under the railroad track, under 41, and that's somehow going to be cost feasible to do is asinine in the extreme. But this causes a big delay that impacts me, that they don't care about. More delay on the PD&E too. More delay for the public stuck at the existing intersection. They don't care about. They have an agenda. Got to get this freeway figured out. So that didn't stop them from wasting 6 months on a whim to have the MPO staff evaluate the possibility of going underneath. And had they added the cut and cover alternative as an alternative, that would have added another year at least to perform the conceptual design traffic analysis, hold more task force meetings, and on and on. The board didn't care. So they spent 6 months to evaluate the cost feasibility of going under 41 and the railroad track. The verdict returned by the MPO staff was $675 million estimated project cost to take SR 54 under US 41 and the railroad track. $675 million. Shockingly, even Mariano balked at that number. I say shockingly because I didn't think any cost, construction costs, no matter how high, seemed to matter with these people. 675 million, $1 billion, why not? I mean, if they're talking about elevating the freeway, 754 as a freeway from like Zephyr Hills to Newport Richey, 30 miles of elevated freeway, which would definitely cost billions of dollars. What's $1 billion to go underneath the railroad track? It's not their money. Why do they care? Right? That's one of the things that you have to love about politicians, is that they're so magnanimous with other people's money. So then we name freeways after them. So the board killed the cut and cover option, but wasted 6 months and thousands of tax dollars to conclude what I knew the minute Mariano proposed it, that it was a stupid idea. I knew it was going to be way, way more costly than going over. Why would you do that? Other than to just, it's an alternative that they're trying to that they would build in order for people to be okay with a grade separation there. That's the only reason. Not caring at all about the impacts it would have, about the fact that it doesn't do anything for 41, that it'll cost a huge amount of money to maintain. I don't know what you do if there is a tropical storm. I guess it just turns into a lake and you just wait until, I don't know, you have to pump the water out. Anyway, this episode shows the total commitment the MPO board has to having a grade separation at the intersection with 54 over or even under 41, while in complete denial of just how good the PFI alternative really is and how awful a bridge will be for 41 motorists. So instead of them saying, hey, this PFI is what the task force they want, so I guess we really need to give it serious considerations. No, let's ignore what the task force did. Okay, let's not talk about what the PFI can do for us. Let's not talk to this Parsons guy to learn more about the PFI. Let's just pretend like it doesn't exist so that we can get our bridge. The required process to convert the FDOT classification of roadway from non-freeway to freeway. Okay, so this is another issue for them. If they want to turn 54 into a freeway, they should just do it, right? Be honest about it. The first step, as I understand the process, I may have this wrong, this is my understanding, is that they have to reclassify the road. This is a big issue for me because when they didn't include the PFI or the CFI in the PD&E study because the MPO board had predetermined that the only acceptable alternative at this intersection would be a grade separation. So in their long-range transportation plan, they show it as grade separated, which then meant that FDOT restricted themselves limited themselves to only consider grade separations, PFI and CFI not included. That's the MPO board manipulating the process to get their desired outcome. There's no justification for them to limit alternatives at that intersection to grade separation only, unless they're only interested in turning that road into a future freeway. It would be different if there was something there to avoid, like a historic site, Civil War cemetery, something like that, that they can't move, can't impact, have to build over it, bridge over it. Okay, then they're stuck with a bridge. Or if either of those roads is classified as a freeway, they're stuck with a bridge. But those roads are non-freeways. So there is a process that FDOT does the road classification in the state of Florida. There's a process to reclassify a non-freeway arterial into a freeway arterial. Okay? They could do that, or they could try to do that. The following is a description of the process required by FDOT for a Florida MPO to change the functional classification of a principal urban arterial other, it's non-freeway, into a principal urban arterial freeway. I have emphasized with bold the important text. Clearly, the process of reclassifying a roadway is time-consuming and politically difficult. It's much easier to just replace all major intersections with grade separations. Then once that's been accomplished, obtaining reclassification becomes a lot easier. All the while, land developers can see the future freeway taking shape without having to deal with intense public opposition. So, this is according to Google Bard, the process that would be needed to have a road reclassified in the state of Florida for an MPO to do this. That first, the MPO has to conduct a study to determine the need for the change. The study should consider factors such as traffic volumes, land use, safety, and economic development. The MPO must hold public hearing to solicit input on the proposed change. The public hearing must be advertised in advance, must provide an opportunity for the public to comment on the proposal. The MPO must submit a recommendation for the change in classification to FDOT. The recommendation must be accompanied by a copy of the study and a summary of the public comments received. If the MPO could do this, I think they know that they would fail, that this initiative would fail because there's just going to be too much public opposition. The FDOT will review the MPO's recommendation and make a final decision on the change in classification. FDOT may request additional information from the MPO, or may hold its own public hearing before making a decision. If FDOT approves the change in classification, the roadway will be reclassified as a principal urban arterial freeway. This has a number of implications, such as the roadway will be eligible for funding from Federal Highway Administration for freeway projects. I don't know if that's really the case. I don't remember there being separate funding for freeway projects per se, but maybe there is. The roadway will be subject to the FDOT design standards for freeways. Yeah. The roadway will be required to have limited access, meaning that there will be no direct access to the roadway from adjacent properties. So that's probably the big hurdle for people to accept, is that you have businesses with driveways that connect directly to State Route 54, or they connect to a access road that then connects to 54. Put in a freeway and those connections go away, and then there has to be some other way to get to their business, which could end up being a very circuitous indirect route from an interchange to their business. The process of changing the classification of a roadway can be lengthy and complex. However, it's an important process for ensuring that the roadway network is meeting the needs of the community. In addition to the above, the MPO may also need to consider the impact of the change in classification on adjacent properties, the impact of the change in classification on local traffic patterns, the impact of the change in classification on air quality, impact of the change in classification on noise levels. So it's, I guess what I'm trying to say here is that the honest way for the MPO to turn that road into a freeway is to go through this process, and then they can limit any new projects at major intersections to grade separations. With this kind of reclassification of the road, it then becomes useful to do a Vision 5456 study, do it competently. That would be helpful. But once they have it reclassified as a freeway, then they should do their corridor study with that in mind. All of it is above boards. All of it's honest and upfront. The public knows what their intentions are. You know, everything can proceed in a responsible and honest way. But that's not what's going on here. I think that they are trying to circumvent the whole thing because they know that this would be a dead end. I think they know that any attempt at reclassifying State Route 54 goes nowhere, but they still want to do it. I mean, they still want their freeway. Well, if they can put a bridge over every major intersection, you know, they're one step away by that time. The MPO should work with the FDOT and other stakeholders to address any concerns that may be raised about the proposed change in classification. So now I'm going to go to the FDOT feasibility study. So the feasibility study was a subtask of the PD&E study that District 7 was conducting for the US 41 at SR 54 intersection. The feasibility study, as I said, was supposed to take a year. They spent 4 years on it. Not that they were working those 4 years. What work they did do was basically garbage. They held a public meeting 16 September 2021 where they present the build alternatives, which included the SPUI, PFI, and CFI with bridges. They also provide the public a evaluation matrix that was supposed to give the side-by-side comparisons, which also included the no-build alternative. So they called it a workshop. It definitely was not a workshop. It was an open house. I don't know if the people at District 7 know the difference, but calling an open house a workshop could just be more deception, because a workshop has more, say, credibility, maybe, than an open house. So a workshop is a more structured meeting where the public can learn about the project and provide feedback. It's typically a formal presentation followed by an interactive breakout sessions with the public given the opportunity to participate in moderated group discussions, surveys, and/or charrettes or brainstorming sessions. The key point is that a workshop is interactive for the public. So a workshop would typically be done before the alternatives have been finalized in order to incorporate public feedback into the alternatives. An open house is a more informal meeting where the public can review the project materials and have one-on-one conversations with study team members. There's typically no formal presentation, and the public can come and go as they please. Handouts and comment cards are made available. So the format of the meeting was open house. They did have a video presentation that people could watch that they looped, but that video presentation did not contain VSIM video of the alternatives. It just showed a rendering of each of the alternatives and presented the information that is in the evaluation matrix. The exhibits were just drawings that they put on boards that are, supported by easels, and they had some people standing around. Although when I showed up, they scurried away from me for the most part. And then they had their evaluation matrix on a board. There was one open house. The contract and scope of services indicated they were going to have 20 of public meetings, including a workshop, an actual workshop with the task force, Vision 5456 task force. None of that was done. One meeting. Yeah, so they just had the one instead of 20, which is bad for the PFI, because the PFI needed public exposure and needed for people to see it, to understand it. They did nothing at all to educate the people on the PFI, and of course I was excluded from it completely. They didn't involve me at all in any of the information about the PFI. Obviously, they had decided that the project was going to be a SPUI. They were not going to make it the PFI. If they were serious about the PFI and CFI, there would have been additional materials for people to see, a video, how the PFI works, how the CFI. They would have educated the public on the PFI and the CFI instead of just showing the drawings, their plan of those alternatives. They had no intention of educating the public on either the PFI or CFI at that meeting. It was just to show the alternatives because they had already selected the SPUI in their minds. So the open house that they held was just a formality so that they could put a check next to the box. Yes, they had a public meeting. See, District 7 called their December 10, 2015 public meeting a public hearing. Yeah, that was an open house too, but then they called it a public hearing. There's a big difference between these different types of meetings that they all call, well, they call them something that they shouldn't be called. They're all open houses. That was when they were showing the two SPUI alternatives. A public hearing is performed as the last public meeting to present the final build alternative. So that's yet to be done on this project. They will be showing the SPUI to the public. Again, there'll be another meeting. I think, they pick and choose what rules they're going to follow. So they may not have a public hearing. Maybe they'll call this meeting that they had in 2021 a public hearing. Why not? So the public hearing is has a court recorder present, and it's an even more formal proceeding where people can stand and make a public, have public commentary that is then recorded by the court recorder. This is required by federal highways and is part of the NEPA process. The public hearing is the last public meeting prior to the sponsoring agency obtaining their EIS record of decision. So not only is District 7 full of scumbags, but they're incompetent idiots too. So the PFI alternative was intentionally designed to fail. First by the MPO, then by District 7. So District 7 and the MPO conducted two separate but integrated studies. The PD&E by FDOT, the Vision 5456 study by the MPO. The PD&E study started early 2012 and then was paused for the 2 years, resulting in the 3 final build alternatives that District 7 was supposed to evaluate for feasibility, which they didn't actually do. The pause occurred over my objection and caused a 10-year delay, completely unwarranted, and, as I say in hindsight, intended to manipulate the NEPA process to contrive public acceptance for the SPUI that was being opposed. The PFI alternative was added to the Vision 5456 study by accident as just another at-grade alternative to humor the people who oppose the bridge, which I think that's probably true. I think that it was never taken seriously. I don't think any staff people with Pasco MPO thought that the PFI would be a legit or serious contender. Just another freak intersection to placate the people who were opposed to the bridge and say, well, there's this thing we can consider, with no sincere intention of actually doing that. From day one, they prejudicially wanted the SPUI and were opposed to the PFI. So they include the PFI as an alternative, all the while being opposed to the PFI, which explains why they treated the PFI the way they did. They had no intention of allowing the PFI to shine, allow the PFI to be seen in an honest and objective light. The whole thing was just theater. Just a manipulation. And yes, this took over, this was over a 6-year period, 6+ year period. I was being strung along the whole time. Shortly after the MPO added the PFI alternative to the Vision 5456 study, I sent an email to a TEFI with the MPO, 8 September 2016, advising him that I should be involved. No one at the MPO nor their consultant, Tyndall Oliver, contacted me with any questions on the PFI operation or its design, nor did I receive any requests for information on the PFI. So they just did their own version of the PFI, which was crap, and that's what they presented to the task force. When I saw the very incorrect MPO PFI design, signalization, and analysis, I objected by email. My objections were ignored or dismissed. I CC'd District 7, and they were silent. I was greatly concerned at this point, given the PFI could be unfairly and improperly eliminated at that stage, that it wouldn't actually survive to go into the District 7 feasibility study. Of course, the MPO staff, they were unconcerned. They could care less. But the PFI did survive the Vision 5456 study phase 2 to become an alternative for District 7 to evaluate. Yeah, it survived because of my emails correcting the disinformation the MPO staff and the consultant, Tyndale Oliver, was feeding the task force, where they omit oversaturated conditions. They omit the congestion that will occur at the SPUI signal, where they provide wrong information on pedestrian safety to the task force, where they show the PFI having excessive impacts it shouldn't have, like relocating the substation. There were so many problems, and they didn't give a damn about any of that. So all of my objections just fell on deaf ears, so I went straight to the task force. And then I am accused of lobbying for the PFI behind my back by the director of the MPO and the lead traffic engineer of the consultant team, Noriega. So they just did me dirty time and time again over these many years. I met with District 7 Secretary Gwynn to discuss adding me to the PD&E feasibility study team to provide technical support on the development of the PFI alternative. He refused to let me join the study, saying it would create an appearance of impropriety, which is total bullshit. Total bullshit. I pointed out to him that FHWA said it would be okay and encouraged my taking part to ensure the PFI received competent treatment. But he refused to let that happen. In hindsight, it's clear Gwynn wanted to exclude me because he had no intention of taking the PFI seriously in the first place. That him telling me my involvement would appear improper was a disingenuous excuse given all the misconduct by District 7 and their consultants that followed. He just wanted me out of the picture. He didn't want me to have any influence on the feasibility study. So here they are, tasked to evaluate the feasibility of the PFI, and they exclude the only expert on the PFI. And his position is, well, I can't be trusted because I have a financial interest. That's bullshit, because everything that I do, they have engineering people to evaluate. I mean, aside from the fact that I'm bound by my professional license to act in an ethical manner, beside the fact that everything that I propose to them, they have qualified people to evaluate and validate. Aside from the fact that, how does it serve my purpose to pull the wool over anybody's eyes by designing the PFI, by scamming them about the PFI, by saying, oh, it's going to work when it really won't. How does that benefit me? Do I get to keep my money? Do I get paid if the PFI doesn't work? I have every interest, motivation to ensure that the PFI is designed and built in the very best way possible to achieve the best outcome possible. This is also my legacy. This is the final achievement of my career, So I'm going to just scam everybody? That's nonsense. That's complete nonsense. But as I say, everything that followed, all of the improper conduct by them, shows that this appearance of impropriety was just him scamming me, him treating me like a chump. That's what was really going on. And my involvement would have been free. I would have been happy to be on the team free of charge to ensure that the PFI is competently treated. No, that was denied. So after the PFI was added as an alternative to the PD&E, in addition to my exclusion, no one at District 7 nor their consultants, RS&H and AECOM, contacted me for PFI guidance, technical questions, nothing. Agency attitude internally from emails I obtained via public records request indicates there was no concern for the public or taxpayer welfare, only how to make this PFI thing go away. Because they didn't want to be bothered by it. They want to do what they want to do. So it doesn't matter to them at all. There's nothing I saw in no emails at all where they say things like, hey, oh, I take that back. There was the one mentioned by Chen saying, hey, it looks like, it could operate at level service D, so maybe we should look at it. That was the only time that anything like that was mentioned in the emails, internal emails. As I did with the Vision 5456 study, I sent numerous emails to District 7 objecting to the treatment of the PFI. All my objections were ignored or dismissed. I repeatedly objected to them for not using my PFI signal specification, and they dismissed me with nonsensical excuses. I mean, insultingly stupid excuses not to do the signals as I specified. They had no intention of presenting a proper version of the PFI to the public, and that's fraud. So this table shows my specification for the PFI and what they actually did. Okay, so and it's very simple for them to have followed my specifications to design the PFI correctly. They could have done it. They should have done it, but they didn't. So in terms of signal operation, I specify a 60-second cycle length. Instead, the MPO used 150-second cycle length, and FDOT used 230 in the morning and 200 seconds cycle length in the PM. And these were done using the auto time feature of Synchro. So they let Synchro as this black box, they put the PFI in Synchro, and then they let Synchro time all the signals. You can't do that with the PFI because Synchro doesn't understand the PFI, how it works. It's going to screw up the PFI. I said this over and over and over. Repeatedly, it's what I presented the very first day I presented the PFI to Bogan in February of 2016. I said you can't use Synchro, which is why I use vSim in the first place. But they insist on using Synchro. The excuse that I got from them, one excuse, the first excuse was, well, we want to use Synchro so that all of the alternatives are treated equally. So we're using that tool and that method to time the signals so that they're equivalent to each other, which is a load of crap. as I say, insultingly stupid excuse. Okay, that's the equivalent of that, of saying, oh, we're going to use synchro to time the signals so that they're equal, is like saying, it's like saying somebody's going to evaluate 3 different fasteners: a nail, a screw, and a staple. But to make it an equal evaluation, they're going to use a hammer for all 3. That's how much sense that makes, to use synchro for the PFI and CFI. Synchro doesn't work for the CFI either because of the same issue. Synchro treats each of the junctions of the PFI as separate intersections when they aren't. They're part of a coordinated system that synchro does not understand. So it's completely not appropriate to use synchro to evaluate the PFI. Then the other thing they had to do that I specify is the manual timing in vSim. So you use a 60-second fixed cycle length, balance the signal delay, and then manually optimize in vSim, which is not hard to do. Anybody who's competent with vSim can do that. I do it all the time, and I would have done it. You know, if they struggle with signalizing the PFI, it would be like, okay, well, let me do it, and then you guys can check my work. No, I was never given that opportunity. So that's how they screwed up the signals of the PFI. The PFI signals, there's 5 signals. Each of the bypass junctions has a signal, and then the main junction has a signal. They are a coordinated system. But because there's no black box to do that, the PFI is of necessity. It has to be manually done, which takes an hour to do. You know, it takes somebody competent with vSim and synchro to do in about an hour, and they will have. It's not a hard thing to do at all. It's an incidental thing to do. I've done it many, many times over the years. Then the next thing that they refuse to do is add the auxiliary through lanes. So what you see here is my specification of number of lanes required by approach. And in their columns under the MPO and FDOT is the number of lanes that they use in their design for their alternative. Now I told them early on, I told FDOT early on by email, it's all documented, that I thought the PFI needed at least an eastbound auxiliary through lane. But that was ignored. Not ignored. It was dismissed with another BS, insultingly stupid excuse. Okay, so if the auxiliary through lane is a standard application across the country, every jurisdiction, it's a standard feature, and you've probably encountered auxiliary through lanes many times driving around and may not have even realized it, but it's a lane that is added at the intersection to give more throughput, and then the lane is dropped past the intersection, so it's on the outside. So it's the outside lane that you'll see it's added. More traffic is able to get through with a signal, and then once you get past the signal, the lane goes for some distance, and then it's dropped, and you have to merge over. That's an auxiliary through lane. It's a standard application, and it's in the FDOT design standards. Okay, it should be not a big deal at all. Pasco County has a limit, a maximum number of lanes of 6-lane divided, so 3 lanes each way. That's the maximum number of lanes allowed in Pasco County. But those are general purpose lanes or continuous lanes. They make an allowance for auxiliary through lanes. It's in black and white that if necessary, an auxiliary through lane can be added. So they allow it. FDOT has them as a standard application. The other alternatives, the SPUI and the CFI alternatives, those alternatives get added lanes. They get the auxiliary lanes. The SPUI alternative has 2 lanes on ground level and 2 lanes on the bridge. That's 4 lanes. So even though the auxiliary through lane is on a bridge, it's still an auxiliary through lane. It's not a continuous lane. It is technically an auxiliary through lane. But that's okay. The SPUI is allowed to have the extra lanes. And the CFI has 2 extra lanes. Because I think it's got 3 lanes on the ground level and then it's got 2 lanes on the bridge. So it's got, but they don't care. I mean, it's just playtime. These alternatives for them was just playtime. It's just something to get paid for, to bill while they, it's like Play-Doh, or just it's like preschool playtime, finger painting. That's how they treated this study. Never taken seriously. They probably had interns do the designs. Or at least the PFI and CFI probably had interns doing those, while the actual, experienced engineers did the SPUI. That's my guess. Anyway, I show here, this is after I modeled it, out of sheer frustration, I realized I had to do my own model of the PFI and my own design. I had to do my own alternative to show how the PFI should look. So that's what I did. I did it myself. I did it in, several weeks. It took a few weeks for me to do it. Not 4 years, a few weeks, and I had a whole new PFI, my 4th iteration, because they kept changing the traffic. So I redesigned the PFI 4 times. The 4th one, based on the feasibility study traffic, my signal specification, and I added the appropriate auxiliary through lanes, which is what they should have done in the first place. You add the auxiliary through lane as needed to achieve level service D, no failing movements. So what I ended up with is an auxiliary through lane each direction on 54 and an auxiliary through lane southbound on 41. Northbound on 41 only needed 3 lanes. What they did for the PFI is 3 lanes. So between screwing up the signals and not adding adequate lanes, they guaranteed that the PFI would fail. Guaranteed. Which was their intention all along. Then the MPO, with their PFI alternative, they had single right turn lanes, which is absolutely stupid, and they were continuous right turns, not signalized. Absolutely stupid. So the PFI that the public saw, created by both the MPO and District 7, was crap. And deliberately done as crap to make it look bad, so that they could make the SPUI look better. Let's see, I have a note down here. Oh, it goes under the MPO's PFI. Completely inappropriate for the PD&E study, to be paused for the MPO to do a planning level analysis of the alternatives. which is what they stated. They said, oh, we're going to do a planning level analysis, even though they use synchro, which is used for preliminary engineering, and they used design year traffic. So they used, but they limited it to only the PM. They didn't do AM and PM, which is stupid and unacceptable. You have to look at both time periods, but if you're going to do a planning level analysis, then as I understand it, as I've been involved with them in the past, you use what's called the design. It's design hourly volume. You don't use an AM or PM peak period volume. You use what's called design hourly volume, which is generated differently, and it's typically a more conservative number. Anyway, so this is a 30-mile corridor, and okay, we're going to evaluate the PFI at major intersections on this 30-mile corridor, and we're going to use synchro, and we're going to do a crap design and say, well, it's planning level, so the substation, we've got it on top of the substation, but it might not be like that. It might not turn out that way. So as I say here, the PFI is not understood by synchro and requires vSim to develop a proper signal plan and analysis. If they were going to do this analysis, they should have used vSim minus the pointless exercise of calibration. PFI was added as an alternative only as a result of public pressure for non-bridge alternatives. So there's opposition to putting in bridges. There's opposition turning that road into a freeway. So the conniving MPO board, they contrived this Vision 5456 study with the task force that they're going to manipulate into saying, we want a freeway here. And then they can go back to the public and say, gosh, don't blame us. This is your neighbors saying that it should be a freeway. See how that works. Though the PFI was grudgingly added as an official alternative, both District 7 and the MPO were prejudicially opposed to the PFI from the beginning, for reasons I explained under their motives for breaking the law. Consequently, District 7 and the MPO refused to follow GF Parsons' PFI specifications, deliberately designing their version of the PFI to fail. No effort was made by either agency to coordinate their PFI design with me. Think about that. I bring the PFI to them. I am the sole expert on the PFI. I invented the damn thing. I've been working with it for, by that time, well over a decade. I've modeled it many times. I've had many different designs of it. And I'm completely cut out of their development of the PFI. Both agencies did this. All my technical feedback was ignored or spuriously dismissed. And getting back to the signals, after I objected to them to this, use synchro for all three to make it equivalent, and I point out to them that makes no sense, they go back to they have the consultant use my signal spec in vSim, presumably, allegedly. And this consultant comes back and says, well, it doesn't make any difference, so we're going to leave it the way we had it. I mean, the sheer unadulterated gall of them, the arrogance and the absolute gall they have. Well, it doesn't make a difference. We did it his way, but it doesn't matter, so we're just going to leave it our way. Yet, if you look at their results of using my approach, and that was without adding the necessary auxiliary lanes. So it's just 3 lanes everywhere. That the level of service at each of the junctions of the PFI improves greatly, but they said it also increased the unmet demand. Therefore, it doesn't make a difference. That's wrong in multiple ways. They shouldn't have unmet demand in the first place. That's a mistake by itself that I've complained about and have been ignored. It's also in the FDOT Traffic Analysis Handbook. Correct for unmet demand. And it makes no sense. How is it that the intersection gets more efficient, but somehow the unmet demand increases? That is logically impossible. There's something wrong with their model if that's, and unfortunately I don't have their version of VSIM. VSIM's a very expensive program. My version of VSIM is an old version of VSIM that I bought with my own money. It's a very expensive program, and so I can't check their model. And of course they don't want me checking their model. You know, it's not like they said, hey Greg, why don't you check our VSIM? We'll let you borrow a copy of the software so that you can review our work and make sure that it's, you know, done correctly. No. That would never happen. So yeah, I mean, they gave me their models. I did request their input for VSIM for all the alternatives, but I couldn't do anything with it because I don't have that version of VSIM. So in addition to emails, twice I voiced District 7 sabotage to the MPO at the January 2023 and February 2023 board meetings, and they were silent both times. So I go over this with them in my presentation to the MPO board, and it's just crickets. You know, thank you for your time. Next. You know, go on to the next business. You know, you're dismissed. District 7 excuse to auto time the PFI with Synchro was that they wanted to give equal treatment to the alternatives, which is like, as I said, using a hammer to compare a nail, screw, and a staple. It's disgusting. I mean, and it's criminal. This is criminal conduct. This is absolutely, this is fraud, and it's criminal. So, with respect to my signal specification, District 7, the MPO refused. So I was very straightforward with it. I sent emails to FDOT. I copied both agencies. They both got emails, but some went to the MPO and CC'd FDOT, and then others went to FDOT and CC'd the MPO. Or maybe I just sent them to FDOT when they were doing their feasibility study. But I sent all these dates are emails that I complained. So there's 1, 2, let's see, this is in 6 November 2017, 14 September 2020, 22 October 2020, 6 November 2020, 17 November 2020, 2 February 2021, 2 March 2021, 17 March 2021, 22 March 2021, 1 April 2021, 27 April 2021, 24 March 2022, 7 November 2022, and 8 November 2022. So in all those emails, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14 emails I sent to FDOT and the MPO complaining about them not following my signal specification for the PFI. All of them ignored, or as I said, spuriously dismissed. Yeah, and you might think, well, I should have gone down there and talked to them. No, I want a record of all this. The emails serve as a record. I didn't want anybody to accuse me. If the PFI becomes the project, I get my millions of dollars. Didn't want anyone accusing me of acting inappropriately or somehow skewing the process by having private meetings or whatever. No, all of my interactions I intended to be a matter of public record. All of my communications. So email served that purpose. It shouldn't matter that I'm sending them emails saying, hey, you guys need to do this the right way. Whether I do it by email or I do it by phone or I do it in person. And then with respect to the auxiliary through lanes, they refused to add the ATL, which is auxiliary through lane. They refused to add the ATLs for the PFI, limiting it to 3 lanes each way on 41 and 54. Yet with the bridges, the SPUI and CFI, they have ATLs. They may be elevated, but there's still additional lanes. Both FDOT and Pasco County allow ATLs if justified. That's in black and white. I commented to FDOT on this issue via emails multiple times. So on the ATL issue, I sent emails 14 September 2020, 22 October 2020, 6 November 2020, 17 November 2020, 2 February 2021, 17 March 2021, 22 March 2021, 1 April 2021, 27 April 2021, 1 June 2021, 24 March 2022, 13 June 2022, 17 October 2022, 7 November 2022, and 14 November 2022 on this issue. That's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15 times I complained about them not adding the necessary auxiliary through lanes. Again, ignored or dismissed with spurious excuses. With respect to the ATLs, the first excuse not to add the ATL, well, it adds walk distance for pedestrians. That added lane. I mean, we don't want to increase the distance for pedestrians to cross the road, so we don't want to do that, even though they do auxiliary through lanes everywhere. So I point out, hey, if that's true, then you need to remove 6 lanes from the SPUI alternative, because the pedestrian has to cross 9 lanes to get across 41 at the SPUI signal. Oh, okay, well, then never mind that excuse. The real reason is that the FDOT practice is not to have an auxiliary through lane in one direction, unequal number of lanes through the intersection. So that was the next excuse. And they said this was an email from Craig Fox, and where he says it's FDOT's practice not to have an unequal number of lanes through the intersection. That's absolute utter crap. I've never heard any of that ever. The only time lane balance has ever come into play in my years of as a highway engineer is on freeways, where you need to have, there's a requirement to have equal number of lanes each way, or the number of lanes that approach an interchange has to be the number of lanes leaving the interchange. You maintain continuity of lanes, basically. That's the only time that really comes into play. But at an intersection, yeah, you can have an unequal number of lanes. But then I point out to him that there's 3 intersections on Dale Mabry Highway, which is a 6-lane divided road. It's in Hillsborough County, I believe, not in Pasco County. But they're FDOT intersections where there's an auxiliary through lane southbound and no auxiliary through lane northbound. So that's an unequal number of lanes. There's number 1, there's an auxiliary through lane at those 3 intersections, and 2, it's unequal number of lanes. Okay, no response. No response to that. That's what I'm dealing with, is the level of shittiness of these people. Scumminess. They're just scumbags. All of them are scumbags. Yeah, so what I say here is that the combined effect of not signalizing the PFI correctly, not adding the necessary auxiliary through lanes, guarantees that the PFI fails. The FDOT PFI has multiple failing vehicle movements when there should be none, resulting in excess length and or lanes on the PFI bypass roads, which then produces excess impacts on local road and property access, which is then they feature that at their MPO board meeting in February as negatives of the PFI. Well, look at the impact this PFI is going to have on access. Yeah, your crap PFI. And I told Gwen in an email. I sent an email to Gwen, don't do this. Don't do this. Don't go before the board and show these flaws of the PFI that you people induced with your shit design. But they did. He did it anyway. And his response to that, have an extra deputy sheriff at that meeting to escort me out when I raise hell about it. That's his response. Fuck him. District 7 and the MPO refused to follow my geometric standards for proper PFI layout. Yeah, if you look at their design, which I'm going to show in a minute, it's just a mess. They just treat the PFI with complete disrespect. They made no effort to do it correctly. After my presentation to District 7 Traffic Ops 8 April 2016, neither District 7 nor the MPO initiated contact with me once during the following 7 years of study with any questions, concerns, etc. on any aspect of the PFI design, operation, etc. So they have this new novel intersection design that they have been tasked to evaluate, and not one time do they have a question for me. And all of my feedback they ignore or dismiss. I initiated all communications with District 7 and the MPO over the course of both MPO Vision 5456 Study Phase 2 and FDOT's PD&E Feasibility Study. All my concerns and objections were either ignored or dismissed with spurious excuses. After one of my complaints regarding FDOT mistreatment of the PFI on 11 September 2020, I received an email from Bogan stating, quote, I just wanted to make sure there's no expectation the consultants will use any or all of your website, end quote. This exchange was CC'd to other District 7 staff and Goldstein with the Pasco MPO. No one cared. So he's telling me right there, don't expect them to use any of my technical information on the PFI as they design the PFI. He's telling me in bureaucrat ease, fuck you. That's what he's saying to me. The PFI is a novel intersection design that neither agency nor their respective consultants had any experience, yet they had no questions for me. Then they proceeded to design and signalize their PFI alternative incorrectly and refused to make corrections following my many objections. This demonstrates a flagrant disregard by both agencies to fulfilling their legal, procedural, and ethical obligations to rigorously and objectively develop and evaluate all three alternatives equally. They already had expertise with the SPUI, and the signal software design tool, Synchro, is optimized for SPUI signalization. So Synchro already works for the SPUI, but does not work for the PFI. But for the PFI, they needed my involvement to ensure the PFI was properly represented to the public. This was never done, nor did they make any attempt to do so. If Gwynn had honest, good faith intentions, he should have let me design the PFI alternative, as I originally recommended, using PD&E, design your traffic, then have the consultants check my work. I would have done the design for free. It would have been done correctly. I'd already done it 3 times by then. After checking my PFI geometry and signalization, their consultants could then analyze it using their version of VSIM, but they're all dishonest, bad faith actors. In a word, corrupt. Don't give me any shit about them. Well, they're just incompetent. What do you expect? They're the government. Government's full of incompetent people. No, this is not incompetence. It's corruption. If somebody's incompetent and they're honest, and you point out their mistakes, they fix their mistakes. That's what honest people do. Dishonest people double down. Dishonest people evade and distract and dismiss.